New Pro-Publica reporting reveals that Texas billionaire and Republican megadonor Harlan Crow purchased property from Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and that Thomas did not disclose the transaction. In this deal, Crow reaped 2 vacant lots and the house where Thomas's mother was living, and Pro-Publica says it is the, quote, first known instance of money flowing from Crow to the Supreme Court Justice. The Crow Company purchased the properties for $133,363 from 3 owners, Thomas, his mother, and the family of his late brother, according to a state tax document and deed with the date of October 14, 2015.
In a statement, Crow said he bought Thomas's mother's house with the intention to, quote, one day create a public museum at the Thomas home dedicated to telling the story of our nation's second black Supreme Court justice. He said the other 2 lots were purchased, were later, quote, later sold to a vetted builder who is committed to improving the quality of the neighborhood and preserving its historical integrity. Crow added, improvements were also made to the Thomas property to preserve its long-term viability and accessibility to the public. So, I suspect we're going to disagree about this one too, but let's get into it.
I think we are. You know, initially, when it first came out that he had this relationship with Crow and he was going on his yacht and on his planes and all of that, I was with many people on the right. I was like, this, he can have friends. He can do things. He can vacation. This is not something where we can call for him to resign. I know Sheldon Whitehouse and AOC and others were saying this needs to be investigated, that he needs to certainly resign. And, now that we know that there was actually the flow of money and that he did not disclose it, now it's starting to look pretty bad, where I think there needs to be some sort of investigation. And of course, everyone is comparing this to Abe Fortas. You know, the story of Abe Fortas, where he got, I think it was $20,000 from a Wall Street guy named Wolfson. I think it's Lewis Wolfson. He got a $20,000 payment. He returned the payment, but the pressure came in and said, this is improper activity. You did not disclose this. And he actually resigned. He was pressured into resigning. So we already have precedent that says that this is something that the Supreme Court does not tolerate, and he should get some pressure. Maybe at least there should be some more investigation into what occurred. We don't know, we're trusting Pro-Publica's reporting and that there's nothing more to this story, but on its face, it looks pretty bad to me.
So I like anticipated, I totally disagree, and the main reason why is because there's no pro in this quid pro quo, right? Mm-hmm. If the appearances of corruption, right, there are no matters for Harlan Crow pending before the Supreme Court, right? There's no question of recusal, no question of like what this guy got out of it, except apparently a historical interest, which he's also being dinged for, buying, memorabilia from the World War II, both from communists and from Nazis, right? I think on the face of this is plausible that he wants to preserve this home. I think that actually makes a lot of sense given everything else that's come out about Harlan Crow and what he chooses to do with his money, which I actually frankly think is pretty cool. He's got like all these old statues, for example. Apparently, this is all reported as like this guy is really dangerous. I thought it was, maybe as a history buff, I thought it was really cool, but he's bought, for example, a lot of the old statues from former communist regimes. So he, like, that when they come down, he's bought them and preserved them and put them in his backyard. I think this is very much on, it makes sense with his character and his interests. But yeah, there's no suggestion that there's actually anything going the other way here. So I do think this boils down to, Justice Thomas has a rich friend. And I think it's not so much that I mistrust the reporting from Pro-Publica, it's that the actual substance of what they're reporting seems like a big nothing burger to me. And then there's all these words jammed down in around about how it's sort of scary that this happens. And I don't see this as fundamentally, anything to worry about. And then just one more thing about the investigations, the point that you mentioned, right? The fact that he didn't disclose this was not required by the rules of the Supreme Court at the time. So the justice has now said, okay, well, now they've changed the rules this month, right? Last month, they've changed the rules. Now anything I will report anything of this nature because you've changed the rules about what I need to disclose and what I don't. And he's been meticulous in his disclosures over the years. I mean, he's reported paperweights, right, that people have given him. And this was in a different category of things that was not required to be reported. So I don't know. This seems to me to be an attempt to spin up a story where there really isn't one.
So here's the thing. I would agree with you if there wasn't precedent. Again, Lewis Wolfson did not have immediate business before the court when he gave Justice Fortas that $20,000, which, again, was returned because it was supposed to be a $20,000 retainer, and then he realized that he screwed up and he gave the money back. But yet, he still was basically pushed off of the court. So again, there's precedent, and what you stated earlier is correct about the gifts and the trips and that kind of stuff. That was not part of the rules, and he didn't have to disclose that. But when there's a money transaction, that's not something new. That's not a new thing on the court. That's something that's existed for a while. And we've seen where someone has been forced off of the court for doing something similar to that. So what I would argue is that there's precedent. Now, again, a week ago, I was with you. You know what I mean? We were on the same side. We were on the same team, simpatico. But right now, things have changed when there's an exchange of money going on, and he didn't disclose it. It's not about the quid pro quo. It's about the disclosure. That's what people are upset about, that he did not disclose. He's not disclosing his financial transactions, which is required of him in the Supreme Court. And again, I think the rules over the Supreme Court need to be more clearly stated. They need to be ironed out a whole lot more than they have been. I think that, we should have term limits and all that. But, I definitely think there needs to be, more stringent rules on Supreme Court justices. You don't get a lifetime position and get to do what you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is not a case of a guy writing him a check, right? He bought this lots, right? By the way, not worth a whole lot of money. $133,000 doesn't sound like vastly overpaying, right? It doesn't sound like somebody, and I don't know what the valuation on the property is, but that doesn't sound like one of those artificially inflated numbers where it's like you're not really purchasing the house, you're actually purchasing influence by overpaying by $1 million or something like that. That doesn't seem on its face what's happening here. It's not a direct check that he wrote to Thomas. He's purchasing the property for historical preservation purposes. Again, that actually sounds like a plausible reason to me. Yeah. And Thomas wasn't required to disclose this by the previous rules. He didn't. Now that the rules have changed, he will. Anything in the future, and he's made that as a statement. I just don't see. I don't see where the sort of idea of corruption here is coming. Like, where is the actual corruption coming from? Where is the end product of this quote-unquote influence that is being intimated that Harlan Crow is buying here? I don't see what the end product of it is. Judge Hardiman from the Third Circuit, Judge Ho from the Fifth Circuit actually talked about this with Aaron Siberium, I think yesterday or the day before. And they also pointed to, there's no matters before the court. They said actually this is sort of, this would radically change. If this was forbidden, this would radically change the behavior of the judiciary across the board. They said both of them, we go out to golfing with our friends or whatever. So they saw Thomas's behavior as very much in line with what is appropriate for a judge, and again didn't see the big story here. So then you have two other federal judges coming out and saying This is an attempt to create a stink of corruption where there really isn't any evidence that there is any.
Yeah, I would say golfing with your friends is a little different than a financial transaction where you are actually receiving money. And I guess $130,000 isn't a lot to you. You make the big bucks. But,
I don't have $130,000, I'll tell you that. No, but for a property, right? For three properties, that doesn't seem, you know what I'm saying?
For a lot, yeah.
Sometimes you could see somebody purchasing, wink, wink, nod, nod. I'm purchasing the property, but actually I'm writing you a check for twice the value or something. That doesn't seem on the face of it what's going on here.
Right. Well, I think, again, I don't want to start to guess because, of course, we can look at scenarios where this, of course, he wants this property sold, and who does he go? He calls his billionaire friend. There can be things where this doesn't pass the smell test. But either way, I think that what we've seen, again, Abe Fortas was supposedly gave legal advice and was paid for it, but gave the money back and was still kicked off the Supreme Court. I think, to me, you have to record what it is that you do, particularly financially, to make sure that you don't end up in those kinds of situations. And he failed to do that. But I think what you said also makes a lot of sense. There's no evidence of a quid pro quo. We'll be back with more Rising.